Hello, my name is KY. I have tanked since Trial of the Grand Crusader in Wrath of the Lich King. I have occasionally dabbled in healing. I have ranked top 2.5% for multiple tanks in the US for Mythic Plus. I have also achieved the rival title in PvP when it was the top 10% of the arena ladder. Going into the first poll here, I am going to do a double pull, which on Fortified is a little scary. It's a lot of damage can be going out on the DPS and the healer, so it's a lot of responsibility for using defensives on them. And in this first area, there's not a lot of magic damage, so I can't AMZ for them uh, to help very much. Uh, But what I am going to be looking out for is the kicks, the disrupting shout on the plane stompers and the lance masters. Uh, don't want your casters to be having to stop casting. And then the abilities that can't be kicked but still have to be stopped with some kind of CC are Rally the Clan from the Horn Sounders, and if you can get the Rain of Arrows from the Archers, that will help your DPS not have to be forced to move around as much. That way they can have better uptime. Uh, Casters can finish their cast if they need to hard cast more. And there will be an ability Swift Stab that puts a bleed on a random player. Uh, as far as I know, this is unavoidable. Uh, there will be times where Ursula's Vortex is down and it will grip them back in, or a bomb limb is up and it will grip them back, and the player still gets the bleed on them. A number of mobs in Dragonflight have this kind of mechanic that is unstoppable damage. When I'm thinking about chain pulling like this, I'm thinking about where my CDs are at and what CCs I have. In terms of CDs, I know that 2 minutes should be coming up soon. Uh, you can actually see that the mage recently popped Icy Veins. It's actually probably falling off soon, but he does have mirror images up. You can see the ret has wings available. You can pop those. The rogue also has Deathmark available. In terms of CCs, uh, it's a little scary because I'm going to be mostly relying on A-Bomb Limb. I don't have Asphyxiate or Blind for any more reliable stops. You can shimmy around with A-Bomb Limb and uh, to some degree force stops on certain mobs. Uh, Chain the 3-pack into this last Lance uh, pack. Uh, I don't have great threat on it, as I'm just have a couple of ticks of Death and Decay and then gripping the Archer. On other tanks, I just run at it and try to kill the Archer first, and then try to run the other two mobs into this last pack. Can use it as just a pull to get CDs back. Going into the first boss, Granth, first thing I look for is to see if the healer has started drinking. After that, what you're gonna look to do is to get stops on the ad, whether it's just slows with chains or uh, asphyxiate blind, gripping it, whatever it may be. Um, and then if you are the one who is activating the lances, you can position yourself between the boss and the lance, and then use the tectonic stomp to knock you back into the lance. It lets you get a little extra uptime on the boss. Gives you some free mobility. The higher keys you go, you definitely want to be using your defensives on this. Uh, it will do a decent amount of damage, and there's not a lot else on this boss that threatens a tank. Uh, so it's a good way to get good use out of your defensives. Going into this next area as we're flying, what I'm thinking about is what stops and kicks I need to get. Uh, on the Storm Speaker, you can kick both the Summon Squall and the Tempest cast. The Squall does a Surge cast that does a lot of damage to tanks. Uh, so both stopping the Summon Squall and the Surge cast, which are both kickable, uh, is is very powerful. Uh, the Tempest from the Storm Speaker puts debuff and does a lot of damage to everybody in the party. It's very important to uh, stop that cast as well. And then the Stormcallers in each of the areas will cast a Stormbolt, which requires a kick rotation. It does cast on random players. Uh, so if you are assigning kicks or doing a kick rotation, you can uh, skip kicks if it is on the tank. Otherwise, just kick on CD. Everything can be kicked. Uh, Everything that can be kicked should be kicked. Um, Also, the patrolling Thunder Beast does a Thunder Strike. It does a lot of damage just to DPS. That should also be kicked. Things that you do not need to kick or stop are the Storm Shields that the Primal Storm Shields cast. Uh, they can be purged or spell stolen, which, at least for the boss, you should definitely have a mage, a demon hunter, a shaman, uh, some class that can uh, consistently purge or spell steal off magic buffs. Uh, Also, the patrolling gust have a shield on them, and that can also be purged or spell stolen. That's a lot of damage that doesn't need to be done to them. The arc blades in this area also have a dangerous ability, Arcing Slash, which in the last totem pole, you'll see a couple times I backpedal away from the mobs while they're doing the Arcing Slash. I believe one of the times I do manage to avoid getting hit by it. Does reduce a lot of damage to both you, the tank, and to another player, as the name suggests. The uh, ability does arc off of you and hit another player. Again, first thing I'm looking at when I'm starting to engage this boss is has the healer started drinking. After that, I'm looking to get as close to this boss as I can before engaging him. Uh, if you are outside of his melee range when he engages, he does a ranged version of his melee attack, uh, which hits significantly harder and is very dangerous for the tank. It is a magic ability, so for a Death Knight, I could use AMS for it. However, I do want to be saving my defensives for the energy surge. If for some reason uh, whoever has the purge, the mage, shaman, uh, hunter, whoever it is that can purge the magic ability, is slow on purging the energy surge ability, the tank can get hit pretty hard during that uh, buff window. Otherwise, it's looking for uh, ways to collect orbs while staying inside of his melee range. Again, going outside of that melee range, he will do the uh, range version of his auto attack, which hurts significantly harder. So collecting orbs, but then also this is a great area for AMZ. Unfortunately, uh, if people are spread out too much, AMZ doesn't get a lot of value. But that is one thing that you can look for if two or more people are close together. You can AMZ during the uh, electric storm to reduce a decent amount of damage. Going into the trash for the third boss, uh, the Soul Harvesters have a Deathbolt volley for melee kicks. It does require a 2-kick rotation, which does eat up a lot of resources dedicated to the one mob. But also the Ohuna have a Rotting Wind cast. This puts a dot on the entire group. There are multiple of the Ohuna in a couple of these packs, and a patrolling pack of 3 of them that fly around. Getting stops on the Rotting Wind is very powerful. It can be dealt with in a similar way that the bursting affix is dealt with. If the healer is prepared to heal with it and uh, precast shots or is prepares with their CDs, ramps, and sets up, it can be dealt with on uh, lower key like a 9 without too much of an issue. It does commit a decent amount of resources on the part of the healer. But the corruptors also cast a death bolt. Uh, it is good to stop this as well. it's hard to stop everything that is going on in this trash, but that is another ability that uh, you can kick, and also the Mystics cast an ability called Swift Wind, gives haste to all of the NPCs around them. The Corruptors also have an ability called Necrotic Eruption. You can use your CCs to stop this. I did not initially notice that the Paladin died when I started running away, but you can see right before the Paladin dies, the effect of the Legendary Axe goes off just to the right of my character. Probably got stuck in one of the Necrotic Eruptions. I turn around and unfortunately the Paladin does release, so I could have kept running and just chained into this next pack. As I chain into this next pull, I do chain into a double pull here. Uh, Usually I'd establish aggro on one pack and then chain into the next. I do decide to just do the double pull. Here it is basically bouncing in between the death speakers as they do their uh, chant of the dead. You pull mobs out of one chant of the dead, and uh, one of the death speakers will follow you, and then you, as the second death speaker does his chant, you just pull them out of that and just bounce back and forth like that. That's how I deal with this. That way you have good uptime on, should have good uptime on all of the mobs, except for the one as you're pulling it out of the chant. For this boss, uh, the archer will jump around. There's a light swirling where the archer is going to jump. Uh, Move out of the frightful roar. It is a fear. Don't be standing in it. the brutalize, you do hierarchies want a defensive rotation for it. The Gale arrow, if your group is like this and they stack up, that's a great use of AMZ, is magic damage. For the repel ability, I do not kick it because although it makes the DPS's life a little bit harder, it also reduces damage because the archer's cast uh, do more damage than the annoyance of the knockback. So if your DPS can manage to do damage without kicking it, that is more ideal. Also, the stomps that happen during that are baited at players, so you can uh, bait them in specific directions. And going into this last area, you should be at around 94% count. I am not sure how I'm off. I have done this route a couple of times, and uh, I'm guessing at some point count got changed for some mobs. Uh, I'm guessing during the pre-patch. Uh, but these mini boss mobs, uh, the one does the blood curdling shout. It's a fear. You just kick it. The other one uh, does a vehement charge. Uh, the charge can be baited in a direction. He always charges towards the player who is nearest to him. Uh, as you can see, for the last one, I was able to uh, bait it a short distance. These next two, however, I believe the rogue is standing like, directly under him, and he charges off in random directions. Uh, I try to stand just inside of his hitbox, trying to bait it. As you can see here, the rogue is even closer than I am, which is why he turns around and runs away. Uh, as we get into this last boss, the hero doesn't need any mana. Also, probably shouldn't pull with Death Coil. Don't be like me. Uh, for this Savage Strike, it does do increased damage if you have the bleed on you. So if you have Dwarf ability or uh, an Evoker to get rid of the bleed, that does reduce damage if uh, you need the extra defensive value. As we go into this intermission, I'm going to get a little bit of aggro on these mobs and then going to try to just grip everything together. Uh, Unfortunately, I didn't get everything. My Gorfines wasn't quite as large as I thought it was. But we do manage to get through it, getting stops on most of it. Uh, I do use the get close to the rock so we can use it for his charge here. The conductive strike, as you saw for the last one, uh, you can use things that negate uh, magic applications like AMS or Spell Reflect. to get rid of those. For that way the hero doesn't have to dispel you. For those puddles, I try to bait them away from the rock. Unfortunately, we did have a couple of people close to the rock, so it doesn't look like it's going to be baited and hit the rock, but still not a long distance that he runs. And as I said before, I'm about 3% off count. It's about 16 under. So I'm just gonna run up here and pop as many CDs as I can rotate through. Just if this anything like this, you can just pop everything. The Deadly Thunder that they're casting, it's a stun. Uh, you want to stop that if you're ever playing any of these mobs. Also, there's another Blood Curdling Shout, which again, that's the fear. You want to kick that. And same as in the first area, a couple of these mobs have that Swift Stab ability, which places a bleed on mob players.